by Daylight is a game I could probably never get tired of talking about. There's just so much detail you could go into about any last subject regarding the game, whether it's talking about lore, the meta, the community, or just general advice to newcomers wanting to learn the game. It's such a unique game of its kind as well, meaning that you could probably talk about every subject at length and then do it all over again once the new chapter comes out and rinse repeat. However, despite the fact that it's a horror game, the game actually lacks a lot of gore or unique kills. Mostly it's just stabbing someone and then shoving them on the hook with blood everywhere and that's it. However, there's one move every killer can do, which is their Mori. A Mori is a finisher move, so whenever a survivor is going to die regardless, the game will allow you to finish them off in style on your own. And today, I'm going to rank them all. Every killer in Dead by Daylight's Mori from worst to best. The only rule is that many Mori such as Pyramid Head Secondary 1 will not be counted. But with that out of the way, let's begin with the Trapper. Has the least unique, most boring nothing burger Mori in the whole game. A guy whose power is based around bear traps and the lore involved causing an entire mining cave-in. His Mori is literally just 5 slashes to the back of the head. Like, yeah, that's fatal, but it doesn't fit him and doesn't feel good either. It just looks, sounds, and feels empty. A waste of a Mori. The Wraith has a very similar problem to the Trapper's Mori. That being that they are the same, but at least A, you see more of Wraith in the Mori, and B, he drags the survivor back first before striking them to death. Still overall bland, but a crumb better than the Trapper's. Plague has one of the most lore-accurate Moris, but also an extremely weak one. Like, yeah, I get it, the Plague is deadly, so her throwing it up all over you would kill you, but this is the same throw up that you can infect survivors with multiple times a game. Why does it kill you now? The only reason I can even think that it would kill is due to being hit with their weapon before and after she throws you down, but still. The twins without Victor is basically more of the same as the others, however, at least she uses the sickle like a sickle, and it looks like it hurts compared to the others like Trapper and Wraith, which feel weightless and impactless. Skull Merchant has one of the longest, most anticlimactic Moris in the whole game. She walks up to the survivor, feels them up, which, ew, and then just stabs them before they Peter Griffin death pose and get scanned by her drone. It's overly long and an uncomfy copy of Freddy Krueger's Mori, more on that later. Blight's Mori, lore-wise, is really devastating, but in actuality, it's really tame. He injects the survivor with the Blighted Serum, they grow orange bubbles, he stabs them, and they pop at the end. It feels weightless and incomplete, even though I know in lore how badly the Blight Serum is destroying their body, it just doesn't show any of that in this Mori. The lack of any gore at all is what kills this one. Pig's Mori is very bland. I do like that the survivor tries to defend themselves by putting up their arm, but overall, the same issue of it being basic and feeling weightless and impactless applies here, although it being a throat slit does give it bonus props for being at least a bit more creative. The Trickster suffers from the same problem with his Mori as the Plague does, that being his Mori is using his power. The same power that you need to hit 5 times in a row to remove a health state is now shown as super ultra fatal. Granted, this has the upside as having clear impact unlike Plague's and also having a tiny bit of aura. Clown's Mori is weird because while the killing move doesn't fit him, the act of him removing the finger and being weird with it is perfectly in character. I don't know, the neck snap isn't very impactful but looks brutal, and the pinky suck is weird, but hey, man likes what he likes. Freddy Krueger has a very underwhelming Mori. I know it's a reference to a kill in Nightmare on Elm Street, I'm not that dumb, but the lack of gore, the weight, and build-up only for some blood and to see shitty 2010 reboot Freddy just hunched over with no emotion in his body or face or anything, just removes any impact that this kill has. Dark Lord's Mori is all aura farming, zero impact. It's basically Pig's throat slit but longer, and if she just sat there and drank their blood. It's a cool looking moment. Like I said, it aura farms well and perfectly fits Dracula as a character, but as for impact, it is severely lacking. The twins with Victor is still simple like the non-Victor Mori, but at least incorporates the power better into it. Charlotte uses her sickle to slash the survivor's legs, and Victor mauls them before crawling back inside Charlotte. Nothing crazy, special, or gory, but more inspired than their other one. The Doctor's Mori, just like a lot of these early ones, lacks impact, but at least seems cooler looking at it. Doctor rubs his hands together and fries the survivor's head, which I will say looks more deadly than Plague and Trickster, because Doctor fires his electricity at the ground, and in his Mori, he fires it at their head. Anyways, he fries their head and turns them over to see their rolled up eyes as smoke leaves their head. Not really brutal or impactful, but simple, gets the job done, and fits his character. The Shape's Mori is perfectly fitting, being a direct reference to one of Michael's kills in the first Halloween movie. However, it's just a bit too long for my taste, lasts forever for what is essentially just one single knife stab. Executioner's Mori is inspired. I do like the direction they went with it, and it looks brutal considering Pyramid Head cuts the survivor in half both vertically and horizontally, but the lack of any gore outside of blood really holds this one back. Plus, it feels kind of out of character for him in a weird way. The first Mori is, as you will see soon, just a worse version of someone else's Mori. And I get it, it's a direct reference to what Vecna does in Stranger Things, but it's basically Sadako's Mori, but longer and more uncomfortable. Hell, he even involves eyes in some ways, but instead of ending on a close-up of his eye, he explodes the eyes of the survivor instead. Hillbilly's Mori, compared to the Trappers and Race Mori, is a complete upgrade in every single way. He puts his foot on their back, revs up his chainsaw, and throws it down into their head. Quick, brutal, and tells you all you need to know while working well with his power and character. Cannibal, on the other hand, is basically the same Mori but with more steps. Bubba hits the survivor on top of their head and then cuts them in half with his chainsaw. Works well as a reference to Chex' Chainsaw Massacre, looks great as well. Only thing missing is the aforementioned gore. Like, even a cut on the survivor would make the chainsaw look like it did something. Artist's Mori is pretty okay overall. She sends a crow into the survivor's mouth and a giant crow bursts out of the survivor's gut chestburster style and kills them. I love the detail of a few crows even flying down and picking the remains. A good, quick, thematic Mori. Legion's Mori is always mentioned as being cool because, oh, the survivors fight back, and like, yeah, it's cool for that, but really this Mori is just a few stabs, but what elevates it so high is the end. The big stab in the chest and the Legion slowly dragging it down their chest and pulling it out quickly in one fell swoop just looks so clean. Mastermind's Mori is another one where survivors fight back. They punch him in the face, he infects them with Ouroboros, and tentacles explode out of their body as he puts back on his glasses and aura farms. Effective, sweet looking, and overall badass to use. Hag's Mori was probably the first real gruesome one they added to the game, and you know what? It isn't bad at all. Considering she is a cannibal, it makes sense she would rip your body apart and eat what she could find. It's a good Mori all around, if a tiny bit long. The Onryo's Mori is a quicker, more cinematic, and just cooler version of the first Mori, which makes sense because hers, ironically enough, came first. She breaks the survivor's arm and leg and does the iconic Sadako eye stare, causing the survivor to gasp in fear as they die. Even if the final move isn't some grand kill and is purely cinematic, it fits well considering that is just how Sadako kills people in Ringu. Ghostface has the iconic funny Mori in the game. He stabs the survivor a bunch, then takes a selfie with them and leaves. While the Mori is funny and goofy, the actual fatal part of it is a bit impactless, which does really dampen its placement. Spirit's Mori is surprisingly deep and effective at what it strives to do. Consider that in lore, Spirit sees all the survivors as her father. Her Mori is her enacting the same exact kind of brutal murder onto the survivors that her father did to her before she passed. A stab through the chest and with her katana, and then wailing on them with some more. Brutal, impactful, and perfectly attached to lore. Unknown's Mori, out of all the conceptual Moris, is probably the best. And by that, I mean that while yes, it isn't particularly brutal, if you know the Unknown's lore, then this definitely becomes an evil one. He crawls over to the survivor and sticks his body tentacles into their face before the survivor turns into sand and he absorbs them, removing them from existence. It is short, extremely creepy and cinematic, and not really brutal at first, but the more you think about it, the stronger its placement becomes. Ghoul has one of the best Moris Moris in the game. However, his problem is that he's just way too long. First, he has to pick up the survivor and attack them and taste their blood. Then he has to freak out. Then he has to pin them down and maul them, and it takes like 15 seconds to finish. Sure, it's brutal, and the sound design on Kaneki's screams are incredible, but for the most part, this could have been trimmed down and it would have been so much better. Nurse's Mori isn't flashy, isn't gory, but damn is it brutal. Nurse teleports on top of the survivor and then chokes them out for a solid few seconds. While a bit long, this Mori is just awesome, brutal, and fits Nurse perfectly. Dredge's Mori has the problem of being way too long again, but like Unknown, it has a sick-ass concept behind it. Stabbing the survivor multiple times and slowly dragging them into the Dredge's fog body to disappear is sick as hell. Just shorten the time and remove like half of these unnecessary strikes, and I feel like it could be a near perfect Mori. Animatronics Mori is both really brutal and in character, but also just completely goofy and random. Springtrap stabs the survivor, picks them up, and slams them into an endoskeleton. The endoskeleton ends up sawing through the survivor, causing blood to splatter on Springtrap's face, ending with the survivor falling down and Springtrap jump scaring the camera. A bit long, but fitting for Springtrap, even if it is just kind of completely made up for the game. Huntress is such a simple Mori that really shouldn't be this high, but man, it is perfect. One clean, brutal, and powerful axe shot to the head before a few more axe hits to the chest for good measure. It's short, clean, and brutally effective. Lich's Mori is kinda goofy, but in a perfect way. Vecna summons his purple skeleton army to pick up the survivor, and after a bit of cinematic shots, they pull off the survivor's skin, leaving behind the survivor's skeleton as Vecna taunts. It's kinda goofy, but in such a good way. This Mori is just cool. Knight's Mori is another one that is a bit overcomplicated, but I'm willing to let it slide due to it fitting his power. All of the troop gets him to be involved in the Knight's finisher, with them stabbing the survivor, branding their throat, stabbing them in the shoulder, before Knight shoves his sword through them and rips it out of them, basically cutting them in half. It's a bit long, but overall a brutal and damn near perfect Mori. Oni has another Mori which is a bit overcomplicated and too much, but his just feels so unbelievably violent it kinda wraps around to being awesome again. He stabs the survivor with a sword, rips their tongue out and crushes it in his hand, and then beats them repeatedly with his Konobo. Over the top for no reason, yes. Badass as hell, also yes. Good Guy's Mori is just... it perfectly fits Chucky as a character. Using every last object he can find to kill the survivor, he throws a hammer at them, stabs them with a ruler before shanking them in the face with his knife and kicking their corpse. Chucky is such an asshole, how could you not love this Mori? Cinnabite's Mori isn't brutal due to gore or direct attacks, but just because of the overall disturbing nature of it. Pinhead summons chains which suspend the survivor, and you see it literally pull on and stretch out their skin before they get tied to a giant pillar that drags them out of the realm and into the labyrinth from Hellraiser. Brutal? Not really. Disgusting and perfectly fitting the character of Pinhead and his lore? 100%. Xenomorph has another Mori that's pretty long and cinematic overall, but the brutality that you get from it is just perfect. Xeno turns the survivor over, stares at them for a bit before his mini mouth comes out and pops a hole in their head. Brutal, powerful, snappy, a wonderful reference. Everything about this Mori is perfect. Houndmaster's Mori is actually really strong. First off, the dog attacks the survivor before Houndmaster walks over and proceeds to annihilate the survivor's face with the heel of her boot. It is a brutal and powerful feeling Mori that gets across just how deceptively strong the Houndmaster truly is. Tell me, when you see Deathslinger and hear that his power is a harpoon gun, tell me what you think his Mori should be. Impaling the survivor. Check. Firing the gun while they're impaled. Check. Kicking them away and reloading like a badass. Not necessary, but check again. Such a clean Mori. Demogorgon's Mori is another one that just couldn't be anything else because this one perfectly fits him. He lunges on the survivor and shoves their head in his mouth, muffling their scream and shredding their head. He spits them out and roars, quick, brutal, and snappy. A perfect Mori for the Demo Dog. Kreisu has a Mori that I actually have my jaw on the floor watching for the first time. When I mentioned that this game lacked gore, they must have heard it and jacked it up to 11 when designing the Kreisu. Her Mori starts with her shredding her body form and becoming her floating head form before picking up the survivor and jabbing her intestinal, tentacles into the survivor's body. The survivor's head then fucking explodes as the Kreisu's tentacle wiggles around inside them before dropping them. I genuinely couldn't believe what I had just seen, but holy shit, it was awesome. A 10 out of 10 Mori. Singularity's Mori was probably the first one in the game I saw where I noticed how they began to incorporate a little bit more gore in each of the Moris. Singularity picks up a survivor, injects them with some genetic material harvester, and explodes their fucking face, revealing their skull inside. Less brutal than Kreisu's, yes, but also quicker, snappier, and with a sarcastic-ass robot to boot on top of all of it, yes, yes, and yes. Finally, I believe the Nemesis has the best Mori in Dead by Daylight. This one is the one that makes you feel like a brute. He picks up the survivor with his tentacle, throws them down, and then pulls them up only to stomp on their head. But the sound design, the fact that only Nemesis is shown while doing it, it makes it feel like a 20-foot plus tall monster just exploded the entire body of a small person, because it's basically what just happened. A brutal, devastating finisher for a brutal, monstrous character. In my opinion, Nemesis has the best Mori in Dead by Daylight. Well, I know this list is a lot shorter than most of my other ones, but hey, I'm fine with that. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you want me to cover more Dead by Daylight content, please let me know, as I genuinely love this game to pieces. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and even share the video if you like that much. As always, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!